Imagine this, a world where beauty is not just a desire but a mandate, a world where the mirror is both judge and jury. In the twilight of the 19th century, as gaslights flickered in the grand salons of New York and London, a new obsession gripped the Western world. It wasn't wealth or status, it was thinness. The silhouette of the ideal woman, once celebrated for its softness and curves, was now being cinched, starved, and sculpted into something else entirely, a vision of ethereal slenderness, a body that seemed to defy gravity itself. But this pursuit of perfection came with a sinister twist, a secret so grotesque it would make your skin crawl. Women, desperate to conform, were willing to invite a monster into their bodies. A living, writhing parasite, promised to deliver beauty at a horrifying cost. This is the story of the tapeworm diet, a deadly beauty obsession that swept through the early 20th century, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. To understand how such a macabre trend took hold, we must step back to the turn of the century, a time when the world was changing faster than anyone could grasp. The Industrial Revolution had transformed cities into bustling hubs of commerce and culture, but it also birthed a new kind of pressure. Magazines, now mass-produced and brimming with glossy advertisements, flooded parlors with images of impossibly slender women. Fashion, too, played its part. The corset, a tortuous device that squeezed waists into unnatural shapes, was giving way to lighter, more revealing garments. The Edwardian era demanded a new kind of beauty, one that required not just discipline but sacrifice. For women, the stakes were impossibly high. Society judged them not by their intellect or kindness but by the inches of their waistlines. A 1902 issue of Vogue declared, "A woman's figure is her destiny," and the message was clear. To be fat was to fail. This wasn't just a personal struggle, it was a cultural mandate. Women were bombarded with advertisements for miracle cure pills laced with arsenic, belts that promised to vibrate away fat, and infrared lamps that claimed to melt flesh like butter. These were the precursors to the tapeworm diet, a parade of pseudoscience that preyed on desperation. Each product dangled the same tantalizing promise: beauty without effort, perfection without pain. Enter the tapeworm. The most shocking remedy of all. In the early 1900s, whispers began to circulate about a secret weapon in the war against weight. It wasn't a pill or a machine but a living creature, a parasite that could live inside you, devouring the calories you consumed and leaving you effortlessly slim. The idea was as simple as it was horrifying: swallow a capsule containing tapeworm eggs, let the creature take root in your gut, and watch the pounds melt away. No starvation, no exercise, no willpower required, just a silent, slithering partner in your quest for beauty. The origins of this trend are murky, shrouded in the half-truths of a pre-regulatory era. Some trace it to the shady corners of European apothecaries, where miracle cures were peddled to desperate aristocrats. Others point to America, where the burgeoning beauty industry was quick to capitalize on any fad, no matter how dangerous. By 1910, the tapeworm diet had become a whispered secret among the elite. Passed from one socialite to another in hushed tones, advertisements, carefully worded to avoid scrutiny, began appearing in women's magazines. "Eat what you want and stay slim," promised one cryptic ad in a 1912 issue of Harper's Bazaar. Another, tucked in the back pages of a Chicago newspaper, boasted, "A secret from the old world: lose up to 20 pounds without changing a thing." The lure was irresistible. In an era when obesity was equated with moral failure, the tapeworm diet offered redemption. It spread like wildfire, fueled by a potent mix of desperation, vanity, and misinformation. Underground beauty parlors, operating in the shadows of respectable society, began offering special treatments to those who could afford them. Pharmacies, too, got in on the act, dispensing and marked vials to women who knew the right questions to ask. The press, always hungry for a scandal, fanned the flames with sensational stories of actresses and opera singers who had discovered the secret to their svelte figures. But beneath the glamour lay a chilling truth. The tapeworm diet wasn't just a fad, it was a pact with a parasite, a deal with the devil that promised beauty but delivered something far darker. As women swallowed those capsules, they weren't just chasing a dream, they were inviting a nightmare into their bodies, one that would coil through their intestines and, for some, claim their lives. This was the spark of a terrifying craze, a moment when beauty became a battlefield and the weapons were as monstrous as the ideals they served. But how did such a grotesque idea take root? To understand that, we must delve deeper into the science, the seduction, and the sinister mechanics of a diet that turned the human body into a host for horror. Picture this, a tiny capsule, no larger than a pearl, resting in the palm of your hand. It's smooth, unassuming, and utterly anonymous. No label, no warning, just a promise whispered by a friend or scrawled in a magazine. This will make you beautiful. Inside that capsule lies something alive or soon to be. Eggs, microscopic and malevolent, waiting to hatch into a creature that will call your body home. This was the tapeworm diet, a grotesque marriage of science and superstition that captivated a generation. To understand its allure, we must first understand the creature at its heart, the tapeworm. A parasite as cunning as it was cruel, tapeworms, known scientifically as cestids, are ancient survivors, evolutionary marvels designed to thrive in the shadows of their hosts. The two species most commonly linked to the diet were Taenia saginata, the beef tapeworm, and Taenia solium, the pork tapeworm. These creatures begin their lives as eggs, often ingested through contaminated food or water, but in the early 20th century, they were weaponized, packaged into capsules and sold as a beauty aid. The process was chillingly simple. Swallow the capsule, and the eggs would hatch in your stomach, releasing larvae that burrowed into the walls of your intestines. There, they grew into long, ribbon-like worms, sometimes stretching meters in length, their segmented bodies anchored by a scolex, a hooked, grasping head that clung to your gut like a leech. Once established, the tapeworm became a silent thief. It siphoned nutrients from every bite you took, absorbing calories before your body could. The result? Rapid weight loss, often dramatic enough to turn heads at a society ball. A woman might drop 10, 20, even 30 pounds in a matter of weeks, her figure shrinking to fit the era's unforgiving ideals. To those who didn't know the truth, it seemed like magic, a godsend, as one 1911 advertisement put it. But the reality was far grimmer. The tapeworm wasn't just eating your food, it was eating you. The science of the time, rudimentary and often misguided, did little to dispel the myth of the tapeworm's safety. In the early 1900s, parasitology was still in its infancy. Doctors knew tapeworms could cause illness, but their understanding was limited, clouded by the era's obsession with quick fixes. Medical journals from the period, such as the Journal of the American Medical Association, occasionally published case studies of tapeworm infections, noting symptoms like abdominal pain, anemia, and diarrhea. But these warnings were drowned out by the clamor of the beauty industry, which painted the parasite as a harmless ally, a natural solution. One pamphlet claimed, as old as nature itself. The truth was far more sinister. Tapeworms didn't just steal nutrients, they wreaked havoc on their hosts. Their presence could cause chronic pain, as the worms' writhing bodies irritated the intestinal lining. Anemia was common, as the parasites drained essential vitamins like B12. In severe cases, the worms could migrate, burrowing into organs like the liver or, in rare but horrifying instances, the brain. Taenia solium, in particular, posed a deadly risk. Its larvae could form cysts in the nervous system, a condition known as cysticercosis, leading to seizures, neurological damage, and even death. Yet these dangers were rarely mentioned in the glowing testimonials that filled women's magazines. Instead, the tapeworm was marketed as a miracle, a friend in the gut that promised beauty without sacrifice. The mechanics of the diet were as seductive as they were deceptive. Unlike starvation diets or strenuous exercise, the tapeworm required no effort, just a single, fateful swallow. Capsules were sold under the counter at pharmacies or through mail-order catalogs, often accompanied by vague instructions: take with water. Results in days. Some women were told the worms would eventually pass on their own, a claim that was both misleading and dangerous. Removing a tapeworm often required toxic medications like nicotine sulfate or invasive procedures, and even then, the damage was done. The parasite's presence could leave the gut scarred, the immune system weakened, and the body forever altered. What made the tapeworm diet so compelling was its illusion of control. In an era when women had little agency over their lives, the promise of effortless beauty was intoxicating. The parasite became a perverse metaphor for the era's ideals, something hidden, something invasive, something that consumed you from within to make you perfect on the outside. But as the trend spread, so did its consequences. Stories began to emerge, whispers at first, Then screams of women who had paid the ultimate price for their pursuit of beauty. This was no mere fad, it was a trap, baited with the promise of perfection and lined with peril. To fully grasp its impact, we must turn to the women who embraced it, the ones who saw in that tiny capsule not just a parasite but a path to salvation. Their stories, woven from desperation and desire, reveal the true cost of a society that equated beauty with worth and the lengths to which some would go to achieve it. In the glittering ballrooms of 1910's New York, where chandeliers cast a golden glow over silk gowns and champagne flutes, beauty was more than a fleeting compliment, it was currency. To be seen, to be admired, to be desired meant fitting into a mold so rigid it could crush the spirit. For the women of the Edwardian-era actresses, opera singers, and society darlings, the pressure to embody this ideal was relentless. And so, some turned to the unthinkable, a capsule, a secret, a slithering guest in their bodies. These were the women of the tapeworm diet, driven by a hunger not for food but for perfection, willing to invite a parasite into their very core to claim it. Who were these women? They were the luminaries of their time, their names whispered in awe or envy. Take Maria Callas, the legendary opera singer, whose ethereal figure was rumored to owe its slenderness to a darker ally. Though her story is debated, the gossip of the day painted her as a pioneer of the tapeworm diet, a woman who sang like an angel while harboring a demon within. Then there were the cabaret dancers of Paris, their light bodies twirling under gaslight stages, and the silent film stars of early Hollywood, whose waists seemed to defy the laws of nature. These women weren't just icons, they were beacons of a new aesthetic, one that equated thinness with elegance, success, and moral virtue. But it wasn't just the famous who succumbed. In the drawing rooms of London and the brownstones of Boston, ordinary women, wives, daughters, and debutantes heard the same whispers. They read the same magazines, their pages brimming with promises of transformation. Lose weight without hunger, crowed one advertisement in a 1913 issue of Ladies' Home Journal, a secret from Europe's finest salons. The pitch was irresistible. A single capsule, no larger than a breath mint, could erase the shame of a rounded figure. These capsules, often sold without labels in discreet brown envelopes, were peddled through back channels, pharmacies with a wink, beauty parlors with a knowing nod, or mail-order catalogs cloaked in euphemisms like slimming tonic. The stories of these women, pieced together from diaries, letters, and whispered confessions, paint a haunting picture. Consider Evelyn Hart, a fictional but representative figure drawn from the era's accounts. A 28-year-old socialite from Chicago, desperate to fit into her debutante gown for the season's grand ball. In a letter to her cousin, dated 1911, she wrote, "I'd rather die than be seen as I am. The mirror is cruel, but there's a way a secret they say works miracles." Evelyn's secret came in a vial, purchased from a discreet apothecary on Michigan Avenue. She swallowed it with a glass of water, her heart pounding with equal parts hope and dread. Within weeks, her waistline shrank, and the compliments poured in, but so did the pain-gnawing cramps. Dizzy spells, a fatigue that clung to her like damp silk. Evelyn's story was not unique. Across the Atlantic, in London's Mayfair, Lady Beatrice Langley, a minor aristocrat, was said to have imported her miracle capsules from a Viennese clinic, paying a small fortune for the privilege. Her diary, excerpts of which surfaced in a 1915 medical journal, reveals the desperation that drove her. "I am more than my size, but the world sees only my waist. If this is the price of beauty, I pay it gladly." These women, bound by a shared obsession, were not just chasing vanity, they were fleeing shame. The era's culture branded excess weight as a moral failing, a sign of gluttony or weakness. To be thin was to be disciplined, virtuous, worthy of love. The marketing of the tapeworm diet was as cunning as it was cruel. Advertisements, shrouded in vague promises, preyed on this insecurity. A 1912 pamphlet, circulated in New York's underground beauty scene, declared, "No starvation, no struggle, just results." The language was seductive, evoking a sense of empowerment. You could control your body, defy nature, outsmart the mirror. Yet the reality was far uglier. The capsules, often sourced from dubious suppliers, were a gamble. Some contained viable tapeworm eggs, others were inert. Whether whispered in parlors or scrawled in tear-stained journals, reveal a truth as unsettling as the parasite itself. Beauty was a cage, and the tapeworm was both key and captor. They swallowed those capsules not just for slenderness but for salvation, for a chance to be seen as enough in a world that demanded perfection, but as the worms coiled within them. Another chapter was unfolding, one of pain, regret, and a reckoning that would shake the foundations of this deadly craze. The promise of the tapeworm diet was a siren song, beauty without effort. Buried beneath the glamour of a society obsessed with appearances, the women who embraced the tapeworm diet didn't just risk their health, they wagered their lives, and many paid the ultimate price. This is the story of the wreckage left behind, a grim tableau of suffering that history has largely forgotten. The medical records of the era, though sparse, tell a chilling tale. In 1914, a young woman in Philadelphia, known only as Miss A in a Journal of the American Medical Association case study, was admitted to a hospital with symptoms that baffled her doctors: searing abdominal pain, unrelenting nausea, and a pallor that suggested she was bleeding from within. When surgeons operated, they found a tapeworm nearly 10 feet long coiled in her intestines, its hook staring into her gut. She survived the surgery, but never fully recovered, her body ravaged by years of parasitic invasion. Miss A was one of the lucky ones. Others were not so fortunate. In 1916, a London coroner's report detailed the death of a 32-year-old actress, her name withheld to protect her family's reputation. She had collapsed during a rehearsal, seizing uncontrollably as her colleagues watched in horror. An autopsy revealed the cause: cysticercosis, a condition where tapeworm larvae, likely from Taenia solium, had migrated to her brain, forming cysts that triggered fatal seizures. Her death was a stark warning, but it was drowned out by the era's obsession with thinness. Beauty, it seemed, was worth any risk, even death. The physical toll of the tapeworm diet was as varied as it was devastating. The worms, gorging on their host's nutrients, caused more than just weight loss. Chronic anemia left women pale and weak, their bodies starved of iron and vitamins. Digestive havoc was common: diarrhea, bloating, and cramps that could double someone over in pain. In severe cases, the worms perforated the intestinal wall, leading to infections that could turn septic. For some, the damage was permanent: scarred intestines, compromised immune systems, even infertility. A 1918 medical conference in Boston presented a case of a woman whose tapeworm infection had so weakened her body that she could no longer conceive, a loss she mourned as deeply as her health. Yet these horrors were rarely discussed in the open. Doctors who raised alarms were dismissed as alarmists, their warnings overshadowed by the beauty industry's relentless hype. A 1915 editorial in The Lancet condemned the tapeworm diet as a barbaric folly, but its words reached only the medical elite, not the women poring over fashion magazines. The public's ignorance was no accident. The beauty industry, unregulated and unchecked, thrived on secrecy. Suppliers of tapeworm capsules operated in the shadows, their products sold through coded language and discreet transactions. When tragedies occurred, they were hushed up, attributed to natural causes or female hysteria to avoid scrutiny. The human cost was staggering, yet the stories of these women were often reduced to footnotes. Consider Clara, a fictional composite based on real accounts. A 25-year-old seamstress from Brooklyn who, in 1913, spent her meager savings on a vial of slimming pills from a back alley vendor. For a few months, she glowed with pride as her dresses hung looser, her cheekbones sharper. But then came the fevers, the blood in her stool, the nightmares of something moving inside her. By the time she sought help, her body was a battleground. Surgeons removed a tapeworm stretching nearly 15 feet, but the damage was done. Clara survived, but her health never recovered, and her dreams of a better life faded with her strength. These stories, multiplied across cities and continents, paint a portrait of a society willing to sacrifice its daughters for an impossible ideal. The tapeworm diet wasn't just a medical failure, it was a moral one, a reflection of a culture that valued appearance over life itself. But as the body count rose, so did the voices of dissent. Doctors, reformers, and a fledgling regulatory system began to push back, setting the stage for a reckoning that would challenge the very foundations of the beauty industry. The tapeworm diet was a house of cards, and the winds of change were gathering strength. The tapeworm diet was a shadow cast by a society obsessed with perfection, a grotesque secret that thrived in the crevices of an unregulated world. By the late 1910s, The whispers of its dangers could no longer be ignored. Bodies were breaking, lives were crumbling, and the medical community, once drowned out by the clamor of beauty's siren song, began to roar. This was the moment when science, law, and morality collided, launching a campaign to dismantle a deadly craze. But the fight was far from easy. The tapeworm diet had sunk its hooks deep, and uprooting it would require a revolution in how society viewed beauty, health, and the cost of vanity. The turning point came with the dawn of a new era in medical oversight. In 1906, the United States passed the Pure Food and Drug Act, a landmark piece of legislation that laid the foundation for the Food and Drug Administration (FDA). This was a response to a broader crisis. The market was flooded with patent medicines, elixirs laced with opium, cocaine, or worse, peddled as cures for everything from headaches to obesity. The tapeworm diet, though more sinister, was part of this same wild west of pseudoscience. Capsules containing tapeworm eggs were sold under vague names like slimming pills or vitality tonics, slipping through the cracks of a system that had yet to define what constituted a drug or a danger. By 1915, medical journals were sounding alarms with increasing urgency. A 1917 article in the Journal of the American Medical Association detailed a series of cases where women suffered catastrophic complications from tapeworm infections, from intestinal perforations to brain cysts. This is no cure, the author declared, but a plague masquerading as medicine. Doctors began to speak out publicly, their voices amplified by a growing cadre of reformers who saw the beauty industry as a predator preying on vulnerable women. In London, the British Medical Association launched a campaign to educate the public about the dangers of miracle diets, singling out the tapeworm as a particularly egregious example. Public health campaigns followed, their tone equal parts warning and plea. Posters appeared in pharmacies and women's clinics, depicting the grim reality of parasitic infection, emaciated figures, hollow-eyed and clutching their stomachs, with captions like "Beauty at What Cost?" In New York. A 1919 lecture series hosted by the Women's Medical Association drew crowds of curious and horrified listeners who gasped as physicians displayed preserved tapeworms, pale, ribbon-like creatures stretching the length of a table. These efforts aimed to pierce the veil of glamour that shrouded the diet, exposing it as a grotesque gamble with life itself. Yet the battle was uphill. The beauty industry, flush with profits, fought back with cunning. Underground suppliers moved their operations to the black market, where capsules were sold in speakeasies and back alley parlors. Advertisements grew subtler, cloaking their promises in coded language. Discover the secret European aristocrats swear by. Even as regulators cracked down, the lure of effortless beauty kept the tapeworm diet alive in the shadows. In 1920, a raid on a Chicago pharmacy uncovered a stash of unmarked vials, each containing tapeworm eggs sourced from dubious suppliers in Eastern Europe. The pharmacist, when questioned, shrugged and said, "Women will pay anything to be thin." The law, however, was gaining ground. By the early 1920s, the FDA and its counterparts in Europe began tightening regulations on patent medicines, requiring proof of safety and efficacy. This spelled doom for the tapeworm diet, which could not withstand scrutiny. In 1923, a high-profile case in Boston saw a beauty doctor prosecuted for distributing tapeworm capsules that led to the death of a young heiress. The trial, flashed across newspapers, was a turning point. Headlines screamed, "Death by diet," and editorials decried the barbaric pursuit of vanity. For the first time, beauty was being judged not just by aesthetics, but by ethics, a radical shift that challenged the very foundations of the industry. Still, the tapeworm diet didn't vanish overnight. In the shadowy corners of society, where desperation outpaced caution, it lingered into the 1930s, a ghost of a fad that refused to die. But the tide had turned. The crackdown marked a pivotal moment, not just for the tapeworm diet but for the broader conversation about beauty and health. Society was beginning to ask a new question. If the price of perfection was a parasite, was it worth it? The answer, etched in the scars of countless women, was a resounding no. Yet the echoes of this question would reverberate far beyond the early 20th century, haunting us in ways we're only beginning to understand. The tapeworm diet is a ghost story from a bygone era, a chilling reminder of how far we've gone in the name of beauty. But ghosts don't always stay buried. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the specter of the tapeworm diet reemerged, not as a capsule but as a warning, a mirror held up to our own obsessions. The women who swallowed parasites in 1910 may seem distant, their choices unthinkable. But their desperation is not so different from our own. The quest for the perfect body, it turns out, is a timeless hunger, and its price is still being paid. In the early 2000s, the tapeworm diet flickered back to life, a macabre footnote in the digital age. Online forums and shady websites began offering slimming capsules that echoed the promises of a century before. A 2007 report from the Los Angeles Times uncovered a black market trade in tapeworm eggs, sourced from unregulated suppliers in Mexico and Asia. Marketed to desperate dieters through cryptic ads on the dark web. Lose 20 pounds in a month, no diet required, one site boasted, its language eerily reminiscent of a 1912 magazine. The FDA swiftly issued warnings, and customs officials seized shipments at the border, but the trend's resurgence was a stark reminder: the lure of a quick fix never truly dies. The tapeworm diet may have faded, but its spirit lives on in the modern beauty industry's endless parade of miracles. Detox teas, laced with laxatives that ravage the gut. Injections of hormones or untested compounds, promising to sculpt the body in weeks. Extreme surgeries, liposuction, gastric balloons, and procedures so invasive they rival the tapeworm's brutality. These are the descendants of those Edwardian capsules, dressed in sleeker packaging but no less dangerous. In 2023, a viral TikTok trend saw influencers promoting juice cleanses that left users hospitalized with malnutrition, a grim echo of the starvation-like effects of a tapeworm infection. The names change, but the game remains the same: beauty at any cost. What drives this cycle? Historians like Dr. Sarah Fielding, whose 2019 book The Price of Perfection examines the tapeworm diet, argue that it's rooted in a deeper truth. Beauty has always been a currency, and its value is set by a society that demands sacrifice. In 1905, that sacrifice was a parasite. Today, it's a pill, a procedure, or a punishing regimen. The pressure to conform, to shrink, to sculpt, to erase imperfection hasn't lessened, it's simply evolved. Social media, with its filtered images and curated lives, has replaced the magazines of the Edwardian era, but the message isn't changed. Your worth is in your waistline. This legacy forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. Are we so different from the women of 1910? They swallowed tapeworm eggs in secret, driven by shame and the promise of acceptance. We chase the same dream, albeit through different means: crash diets. A mental toll that lingers long after the physical scars fade. A 2024 study by the National Eating Disorders Association found that 1 in 5 American women reported engaging in extreme weight loss behaviors. A statistic that would feel all too familiar to Evelyn Hart or Lady Beatrice Langley. The tapeworm diet is more than a historical curiosity. It's a cautionary tale, a warning etched in the bodies of those who suffered for it. It reminds us that beauty, unchecked, can become a predator, and that the pursuit of perfection is a path lined with peril. As historian Dr. Fielding writes, the cost of beauty is never just skin deep, it's paid in blood, in health, and lives. The women of the early 20th century paid that price, and their stories demand that we pause and reflect. What are we willing to sacrifice today? And when will we learn that beauty, true beauty, shouldn't require a monster in our midst? This is the legacy of the tapeworm diet, a story of desperation, delusion, and the dawn of a reckoning. It's a call to question the ideals we chase and the prices we're willing to pay. Because if history teaches us anything, it's this: the mirror may lie, but the truth always finds a way to slither free.